Today, we're digging into a name you might have seen in the halls of museums, but is now infamous for its role in one of the worst public health crises of our time. We're talking about the Sackler family and their undeniable link to the opioid epidemic.
And right from the get-go, you're hit with this staggering contradiction. On one side, you have a public health disaster that has killed hundreds of thousands of people. And on the other, the family whose company was at the center of it all walked away with zero criminal convictions. How does that even happen? That's the huge question we're going to unpack here.
So to really understand this story, you have to know who we're talking about. So let's start with the family that was behind the drug.
Okay, so the Sacklers. They were, for all intents and purposes, a pharmaceutical dynasty. They owned a company called Pharma, which created and sold a painkiller I'm sure you've heard of, OxyContin. And that single drug, it made them billionaires. But it also ended up right at the epicenter of the opioid crisis.
Now, you might be wondering, how did one drug cause so much damage? Well, it wasn't an accident. It was all part of a very deliberate and, frankly, a very, very effective business plan.
You can basically boil their entire strategy down to these three pretty brutal steps. First, they misled doctors and the public, pushing the idea that the risk of addiction to OxyContin was minimal. Second, they actively downplayed the addiction risks that they knew were there. And third, the whole point of steps 1 and 2, maximize profits, no matter what.
When you have a business strategy that's that successful in the marketplace, well, it's going to have a huge impact on the real world. And in this case, that impact was absolutely catastrophic.
This timeline just lays it all out, clear as day. The late 90s, OxyContin hits the market with that super aggressive marketing push we just talked about. Then through the 2000s, as they double down on that marketing, prescriptions just soar. And by the time we hit the 2010s, it's undeniable. The United States is in the middle of a full-blown opioid epidemic. The connection is just impossible to miss.
And let's be really clear about what epidemic means here. It's not just a word. It represents hundreds of thousands of real people, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, whose lives were lost in an overdose crisis that Pharma's drug helped create.
And this is maybe the best way to frame it. This isn't just a story about a business that made some mistakes. One analysis put it perfectly. This is white-collar corporate crime with lethal consequences. The decisions made in those boardrooms had deadly results on the streets. We're talking a body count that rivals many violent crimes.
So with this level of devastation, you'd expect a pretty severe legal reckoning, right? So what ended up being the price for all of this pain? Let's take a look at the legal and financial fallout.
This table just says it all. Pharma, the company, it went bankrupt. The Sackler family, yeah, they paid billions of dollars in civil settlements. But then you get to that last column, criminal conviction. For the company, nope. And for the family, nope. Billions of dollars paid out, but not one single day of jail time for anyone in the family.
And that, right there, brings us all the way back to where we started. Back to that central, nagging paradox of this whole story, and to one final, really critical question about what we call justice.
So here it is. When the actions of a corporation lead to a massive death toll, what does justice actually look like? Is it just a huge financial settlement, one that's still only a fraction of the profits that were made? Or does real justice demand something more, like criminal accountability? The Sackler story really forces us to look at that question and wonder, what does justice look like when the price of profit is paid in human lives?